AI isn't breaking your business. It's revealing what already was. Many leaders believe artificial intelligence is creating disruption inside their organizations. But in most cases, AI is not creating chaos. It is revealing chaos that already existed. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. Because when AI begins to expose workflow gaps, decision inconsistencies, communication breakdowns, and unclear ownership, organizations often interpret that exposure as technological friction. In reality, AI is acting like a structural mirror. It makes ambiguity visible. It highlights inefficiencies that were previously hidden inside human workarounds. And it removes the comfort of manual buffering that allowed organizations to function despite those inefficiencies. Before AI, many operational problems were quietly absorbed by people. Employees compensated for unclear processes. Managers manually reconciled conflicting information. Leaders relied on informal communication to resolve gaps that formal structure had not addressed. Those adaptations allowed the organization to keep moving. But they also concealed structural fragility. AI does not tolerate ambiguity in the same way humans do. It requires clearer inputs, more consistent workflows, and defined ownership. And when those conditions are missing, the friction becomes visible immediately. That visibility can feel uncomfortable, not because AI is malfunctioning, but because the organization is encountering aspects of itself that were previously obscured. Let's consider a practical example. Imagine a company introducing AI-assisted reporting. The expectation is that summaries will be generated faster and decision-making will accelerate. But instead, the organization experiences confusion. Different departments provide inconsistent data. Ownership of key metrics is unclear. Reports contain conflicting interpretations, and the AI outputs reflect that inconsistency. Leadership may conclude that the tool is unreliable, but the deeper reality is that the reporting structure lacked alignment long before AI was introduced. The difference is that human interpretation previously smoothed over the inconsistency. AI simply surfaced it. That can feel like regression, but it is actually diagnostic progress, because you cannot optimize what remains invisible. This is why early AI adoption sometimes feels destabilizing. Not because the technology is inherently disruptive, but because clarity can be uncomfortable when ambiguity has been normalized. Organizations often operate with a surprising amount of informal structure. Processes exist, but they are interpreted differently across teams. Decision criteria exist, but they are applied inconsistently. Responsibilities exist, but they are not always explicitly defined. Humans are remarkably effective at navigating that ambiguity through conversation, intuition, and improvisation. AI is not, and that difference exposes structural assumptions that were never fully examined. Now here is the important insight. Exposure is not failure. Exposure is information, and information creates opportunity for intentional design. The organizations that benefit most from AI are not the ones with the most advanced tools. They are the ones willing to interpret friction as feedback rather than as malfunction. When AI reveals inconsistency, the correct response is not frustration, it is curiosity. What is this friction telling us about our workflow? Where is ownership unclear? Where do definitions vary across teams? Which decisions rely on interpretation instead of structure? Those questions transform discomfort into diagnosis, and diagnosis is the beginning of improvement. Another common example appears in customer communication. Organizations introduce AI to assist with responses, follow-up, or support triage. But outputs vary depending on who initiates the interaction. Tone feels inconsistent. Information is incomplete. Escalations occur unexpectedly. Again, leadership may interpret this as a tool limitation, but often the underlying issue is that customer communication standards were never fully unified. Different team members operated with different assumptions. AI did not create that inconsistency. It illuminated it, and illumination provides a rare opportunity to establish clarity that previously felt unnecessary. This pattern repeats across many areas. hiring processes, internal reporting, sales follow-up, vendor management, knowledge transfer. Anywhere internal adaptation has compensated for unclear structure, AI introduces transparency. And transparency can feel like disruption when organizations are accustomed to quiet workarounds. But transparency is also the foundation of scalability because organizations do not scale through improvisation. One of the most valuable reframes leaders can adopt is this: AI is not here to replace human judgment. It is here to reduce hidden variability. That reduction does not eliminate flexibility. It creates a stable baseline from which flexibility can be applied intentionally rather than accidentally, and that is a powerful shift. When variability becomes visible, leadership gains the opportunity to design rather than react, to define rather than interpret, to create shared understanding rather than relying on individual adaptation. That is structural maturity. It is also why organizations that embrace this diagnostic phase tend to accelerate quickly after initial friction. They stop asking, "Why isn't this working?" and begin asking, "What is this showing us?" That question moves the organization from resistance to learning, from frustration to refinement, from uncertainty to intentional design. And that transition is where AI begins delivering its real value, not as a productivity shortcut, but as a clarity amplifier. It compresses information. It exposes inconsistency. It reveals dependency patterns. It surfaces decision bottlenecks. In other words, it helps organizations see themselves more clearly. And clarity is one of the most undervalued drivers of growth, because leaders cannot redesign what they cannot see. If AI feels disruptive inside your organization, consider the possibility that the disruption is informational rather than technological. It may be highlighting opportunities for alignment that were previously masked by human adaptability. That is not a step backward. It is a moment of structural awareness. And structural awareness is the foundation of intentional growth. The goal is not to eliminate friction immediately. The goal is to interpret friction accurately. When friction is understood, improvement becomes targeted rather than reactive. And organizations move from experimentation toward architecture. That is where sustainable AI adoption begins, not with tool selection, but with clarity about how work actually flows, where interpretation creates inconsistency, and where leadership can replace ambiguity with shared understanding. AI does not create the need for structure. It reveals the absence of structure that growth has already made necessary, and organizations willing to treat that revelation as insight rather than disruption position themselves to scale with far greater confidence. If your AI initiatives feel like they are creating confusion, the most valuable question may not be how to fix the tool. It may be what the friction is revealing about your organization's structure, communication, and decision flow. Because AI does not demand perfection, but it does reward clarity. And clarity is something leadership has the power to create. If you are exploring AI and encountering unexpected friction, a structured discovery process can help distinguish between technological challenges and structural opportunities. That clarity is often the difference between stalled experimentation and confident implementation. If you would like to explore where AI may be revealing hidden friction inside your organization, you can schedule your free AI strategy consultation using the link below. We will examine workflow clarity, identify areas where variability may be limiting scale, and determine how structured AI implementation can transform friction into leverage.